Hello, everyone, and welcome to the User Research Strategist podcast. I am your host, Nikki Anderson, and we are here today to talk about workshop and facilitation as a superpower, which is like the best thing ever. I'm really, really excited. And here today, I have Bindu Upadhyay to talk all things workshops. Hi, Bindu.
Hey, hi, Nikki. Nice to be here.
Yeah, super, super excited. Do you mind just giving the audience a quick introduction on yourself before we dive into this wonderful topic?
Definitely. Where to begin? Hi, everyone. I am Bindu. I'm a lead service designer at Mendix. I am an engineer by training and have shifted to service design bypassing through the corridors of UX research as well. And that's how I came across Nikki. I am originally from India and I've been living in the Netherlands for 8 years now, which means I speak four and a half, five languages
That's
at
awesome.
the moment. Yeah, what attracts me to service design is I love connecting the dots across different topics, across people, and not just look at digital touch points, but also at the people-based touch points, which all comes from, being a researcher and being curious at some point. I've been enjoying a lot of hobbies. So if any of that resonates with you, you can always reach out to me. And most recently, I have picked up how to crochet and how to knit. And I have made a few pieces of clothing for myself.
That is so impressive because I tried knitting once and I couldn't even get through a sock.
Sock is the most difficult one, so I wonder why you chose that. I cannot make a sock yet.
Maybe I should go back and try something new.
Try with a scarf or a coaster, yes.
I love
Start
that.
small. That's my motto.
Nice, amazing. Well, I'm so happy to have you on today. I love that four and a half languages. That's great. I love that so much. And service design is something that if I wasn't a user researcher, service design would have been it. So I am slightly obsessed with service design. I get that.
Great to hear. And I do think that a lot of researchers have the service design mindset, and they make for great teammates to partner with on any project.
Amazing. Cool. So let's talk about workshops and facilitation because I am obsessed with workshops and facilitation. And I honestly think it is a superpower. So I can't wait to hear more about this from you. So, kicking it off, how do you feel about workshop and facilitation?
I have different responses if I'm a participant or if I'm the host
Oh, even
or if
better.
I'm the co-host.
Can we do the participant one first?
Yes, I mean, I've been in some really good workshops in the past, which is what has reinforced my faith. I started learning about workshops by first being a participant,
Yeah.
and I've seen some really great facilitators and how they navigate sometimes very challenging topics as well. I'm a bit afraid of confrontation sometimes in meetings, but seeing them handle with grace is great. But that said, there have been a lot of workshops which could have been an email, which could have been a meeting, decisions could have been made, or they are just being disguised as a workshop when everything else is decided. And those can be very draining and create a negative impression for a lot of people.
Okay, we're going to dive into that a little bit later because the workshops that could have been an email, 100% want to dig into that because I've had the same exact feeling. But first, before we get into it, how about workshops as a facilitator? So, as a host.
Yeah, and that has changed also over time. So when I started at Mendix 4.5 years ago, it was during the pandemic, and I was getting to know my colleagues, introducing them workshop whiteboarding tools such as Miro. So it used to take a lot of energy and preparation time for me. Sometimes I would do two workshops back to back and I would be drained. But over time, I have developed my toolkit, and sometimes I don't need as much preparation time. So I'm much more comfortable as a host now after having been through all these experiences.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it takes some time, just like with anything else. It's a really intimidating thing at first, isn't it? Standing up in front of a group of people.
Yeah. Can I share an anecdote
Yeah,
from
please.
my time? So because I joined here and then I used workshops as a way to get to know my stakeholders and my peers. So this was like, I'll show you what service design is rather than telling you what service design is. So let's do some workshops and also set the tone for how I like to collaborate. And this opened up so many more doors for me. And by being a host, I also tell them I'm not an expert on this topic, and neither is that the hat I'm wearing today. So I'm more guiding. But at some point, I started receiving feedback that, hey, we also want to hear your thoughts or your opinion, which made me realize that then I need to have a co host who will also take on some jobs. And then I can literally switch the hat from being a participant to a host. But not everyone understands that nuance, which also took some time for me to understand that. And I also like to still attend workshops from people in our community. So let's say if there is an online workshop from someone, I sign up also at conferences to also see what are they doing, what works, what can I bring back to my own practice. And so I once reached out to someone who facilitated a workshop on a topic around money and how people experience money. And that's a sensitive topic, but the grace with which they handled the whole situation was amazing. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And I think it's so important for us because a lot of times, I know as like a user researcher, I actually used to try and be a participant as much as possible so that I could see what it was
Yes.
like to
Yes.
be a
Yeah.
research participant. It's just so eye-opening. And so it's so great that you're able to engage in these workshops that other people are running and understand what it's like to sit there and listen and what you can take away.
For sure. Yes.
So I want to dig in a little bit to the workshops as emails because that's spicy and that sounds like fun. So can we quickly go over maybe what would make a workshop that would have been better suited to an email?
For example, if a decision has been made
Yeah.
in the organization or in the team, then it could be communicated to everyone. And I believe in healthy constraints for projects, right? So when certain decisions are made, it helps everyone navigate the scope rather than asking 10 open questions. You can limit the scope. So that's one use case where a workshop could have been an email. Another one is when the key decision maker or a participant is not available, who has very strong opinions. And then you can spend 3 hours as you like, but then if you're not getting anywhere and you're really dependent on this other person, that workshop could end with an email to this person saying, we've discussed these options. We need you to prioritize and choose. So it's mostly around decision making. And there is also a funny website, I think, should this be a meeting? It has a flowchart. I love it. I sometimes show that because people also are like, if they're unable to make a decision in that moment, or if there are few opinions, they just say, oh, let's have a workshop in 2 weeks. Let's get everyone in person, 3 hours magically. Why 3 hours? Why so many people? What do you want out of this workshop by the end of it? Is it something that we cannot do ourselves in a smaller group? So these are typically also the questions I ask my stakeholders.
Yeah, that's a really smart way of checking and evaluating, is a workshop really the right method and approach for us at this point in time? Because I have too sat through and facilitated some horrible workshops, right? It
Such a
happens.
learning. Yes.
Do you want to get all of your user research questions answered, all while hanging out on your couch in sweatpants? No need to join any live webinars and hope that your question gets answered. No need to Google a million different things and sift through some scattered advice that you don't really know is valid or reliable. Not anymore. I know it sounds too good to be true, but I promise it isn't, because if you become a paid Substack subscriber, you get access immediately to a community filled with user researchers that I am in every single day answering questions. Not only can you hang out on your couch, feel less alone as a user researcher, and get all of your questions answered, not only by an expert, but by a bunch of other user researchers with amazing perspectives and experience, you can do all of that on your couch in sweatpants, and I will be alongside there with you every step of the way. So join my paid Substack, get immediate access, and we can relax together solving all of your user research problems. See you there.
I also would like to touch upon the difference between a meeting and a workshop. I
Mm-hmm.
get asked about this as well. And typically a workshop, I see it as a space where people solve something together. They collaborate on a certain topic. It could be problem solving or voting, but in a collective, there has to be a collective element to it. But otherwise, it could be a meeting in the sense where someone gives an update, you ask some clarifying questions, and then you move on with some action items.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can get that confused. So I'm glad that you clarified it, because there were a lot of times where I ran workshops that were almost like too based in like the clarification space. So I like presented personas, let's say, but I did it in a workshop setting, which didn't really make too much sense because it wasn't very much like, let's come together, let's ideate, or let's come together and solve something, or come together and decision make or vote or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting one. I do appreciate that you wanted to make it interactive, right? Like for any research report, if you make it interactive, there is the adoption is better. People feel more invested
Yeah.
in it. But it doesn't have to be a workshop unless you are looking for iteration and certain kind of feedback. Or it could be a workshop where you tell them, take this artifact and craft a pseudo journey for this. Yeah, like then you do something together. I've been in so many of these situations myself, and I say it's a learning process. Even now, I treat it as something that I'm learning continuously.
Yeah, I think workshops are definitely because there's so many different approaches that you can take to a workshop. There's so many different activities. It's just it almost feels like a never-ending tool that you're constantly iterating on and learning on. And as you said, like going to other people's workshops and bringing stuff in and constantly improving on, which is really, really fun if you think about it. Maybe daunting to some who might not be as practiced in it, but it can be really fun.
It can be fun, and that's where it's very important to make it your own.
Yeah.
So let's say if I attend a certain workshop, if I'm trying to replicate it, but if that's not my personality, if that's not my style,
Mm.
it's hard to fly. So I've also seen this in my company where, let's say, a few of us have facilitated more workshops than the others, and the others who want to learn how to facilitate then start comparing themselves, and they're like, oh, but I cannot do this spontaneous thing that you do, or I cannot be flexible with time in this format. When do you know how to do that? I'm like, yeah, then you bring your own personality, and you can be, I know this, people are challenging these terminologies, but you can be an introvert or you can be an extrovert, ambivert, and you can still have workshops and facilitation as your superpower. But it's just that you need to find your flavor and how much energy do you want to invest and how will you handle certain situations.
I love that. And there's two things that I want to follow up on. But the first one is how would you recommend people go and find their style of workshopping? Because I felt very similarly where I tried to copy and paste, right?
Yeah.
Other people's workshop modes. It's the same thing. I tried to copy and paste other people's interviewing skills on top of mine, and it just didn't work the right way. And so I'm curious, do you have any tips for people who might be wanting to find that voice?
I would still say that that's an okay first step because that's when you realize what doesn't fit with you, what fits with you. It's just that choose a low stakes setting than setting with, like, people that you feel intimidated with. A very simple step would be facilitating team retrospectives where you
Mm.
feel safe in your team's space, or the next quarter planning with your team. If you are scoping a new project with a few stakeholders, that's where you can start best. And you can try to use existing templates. A lot of tools these days, a lot of templates out there. Again, you can customize it to some extent so that it suits you, but not everything has to be customized.
Yeah.
And this is something I would tell to myself when I ran the first workshop. I think it took me 3 days to set up this particular Miro board because I'm not a visual designer and I was learning how Miro works as a tool. Now I can do that in 30 minutes because I have all of these building blocks, but it's easy to be fixated on that. So I start on paper, like really a pen and paper, and write things down. And anytime you want to do a workshop, I believe that preparation is the key to success. So there is a simple formula or an acronym called I do art. It's a tool. You can find it online. We can link it, but it stands for intention, desired outcome, agenda, rules, roles, and time. So anytime it's I do art. So you get used to this. And a colleague of mine introduced me to this tool, and she used to use this also for meetings. So whenever someone says that, let's have a meeting, let's have a workshop, okay, what do we want out of this? What's the intention? And that, maybe once you do that exercise, half the time you'll realize we don't need a workshop.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I'm so happy you shared that. I'd never heard of I Do Art before, but I have found the thing that I wish that I knew back then was set goals and outcomes for workshops, because without them, one, you don't know if a workshop is what you should be doing, and two, you're just hanging out with a bunch of people at that point.
Yes, and then maybe that's more like a creative jam session, right? And not everything has to be that structured. Creativity also happens in unstructured spaces. But this is very important to clarify with your audience so that they know what to expect from a session, what energy to bring. Yeah, so I try to clarify this upfront and also share it with the team. And at the beginning of a session, I would also ask them sometimes, what do you want out of this? Then you could say, actually, sorry, that's not in our scope. It's a good topic, let's see how we fit it in. But yeah, I do art as a tool for preparation can help you get like 60 to 70% there already, because you'll also make the agenda based on what you know, and that helps you choose activities. One of the most often questions I get is, how do I choose activities?
Yeah, I get that question quite a lot too. It's like, which activities? And I'm like, have you sat down and thought about what you're trying to achieve? Because that will really help you with choosing activities.
Yeah, for sure. And then you have a lot of websites that can help you come up with activities. There is Session Lab, which also has some basic templates for different kinds of sessions. And in that point is where I think of another tool, almost like this diamond. So
Mhm.
for any topic, I first believe that, okay, we are going to diverge, which means that gather input, someone will present, you ask questions, and then we are going to converge where we might vote or create a concept. The challenge is sometimes you might be on this divergent space throwing a lot of ideas, and then there would be that one person who would start shooting down the ideas or have a lot of opinions around it. And that creates conflict, and then it prevents people from sharing. So any workshop design can be thought of in these diamond shapes. You can have two diamonds, three diamonds, depending on the duration and what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, I love that. And you just touched upon something that's so important, which is how do you deal with difficult workshop participants like that?
Can you tell me what you mean by difficult or what you have experienced?
Sure. So, what I mean by that is, let's say we have somebody who's a no person. Oh, we can't do that. Oh no, or oh, that doesn't make any sense. Kind of shooting down ideas, or somebody when you get that. So that there's that. And then also I find when you get this imbalance in maybe role hierarchy, where everybody just agrees with kind of like the group think of like everybody, let's all agree with the director who's in there. So I'm wondering, how do you manage some of those more difficult situations in workshops?
That's definitely challenging. Let's just say that, right? It none of this is easy, and the same person with whom I'll facilitate a workshop today, 6 months later, might still be challenging for me
Yeah.
because again, everyone has their own work pressures that they're all bringing the urgency for a topic. So it's not easy. That said, there are a few strategies that I have used in the past to figure this out. So
Yeah.
one thing is, who is the key sponsor for this workshop? Right? If it's a product project scoping, research scoping, then it might be a product manager or a group product manager who might be the key sponsor. I align with them, we align on the goals, and I get them to open and close the workshop.
Interesting.
Yeah, then they have a stake in the success of it.
Cool.
So you kind of give some control in their hands. And I mean, that's true teamwork as well, right? It's not that only one person has to run this workshop. It's more that you are the one maybe who's facilitating and bringing this together because you care about it, but
Yeah.
everyone cares about the outcomes and that we will shape it together. So this person needs to have a role.
Yeah.
uh, so you give them this role, you bring them on board. If I'm close with this person, I was with the previous director of our business
Mhm.
unit, I would give him a heads up saying that, you know what, I would appreciate if you take slightly a back seat in this session.
Yeah.
Let's get the others to talk. Or there was one session where he actually opened it by being super vulnerable and sharing an example of how he had certain challenging times and how he overcame that. And that set the tone for the rest of the session. So it really depends on what relationship you have with these people to try and get through that.
Hey everyone, I have been taking some business courses recently and am launching a new membership that's all about how user researchers can become more business savvy, more strategic, and more of a business partner in their organizations. One of the biggest questions that I get asked is, hey, my organization isn't really mature. It has like a low user research maturity level. Please do not let the maturity of your organization dictate your user research career. That's what I did because I was in a lower user research maturity. I kind of let my myself stagnate and I didn't really learn new things. And with that, my skills kind of like deteriorated. I lost a lot of time that I could have used to learn really, really important skills because they weren't necessarily applicable to my organization at that time. But guess what? I got fired. And then it didn't really matter what maturity level my organization was at because I was no longer there. And I wished that I had taken the time to learn some of these skills because they would have been applicable at the next places that I went into. I know that it can be hard sometimes and frustrating when you're in a low maturity organization and you want to push things, you want to learn new things, but please, please, please don't let your current organization and their levels of maturity impact your future career because I promise you, you will not be there forever and you will need the skills that you need to learn in the future. Promise, 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 especially with the user research industry changing and us hopefully moving into that more strategic space and operating more as business partners and innovation partners to our organizations. Also, if you want more details on my membership and how to become a little bit more business oriented as a researcher, check out the link that I have. And I hope that helps.
Another one that I remember is from this book called Art of Gathering. So that's not about workshops, but workshops are gatherings. So I also like to learn from other parallel resources. So there, Priya Parker, the author, said that sometimes you can give a key task to these challenging folks so that they're invested in the success of your session, so that they won't be the ones that are complaining. So all of you who's out there planning events or anything, you could do this. That person can be responsible for making sure that the food table is set, or that they can keep the time, or that everyone in the workshop has an opinion or can voice their opinions.
So smart.
You, you know, it can feel manipulative, but it's not that. You are really like setting yourself up for success and the group as well.
Oh, I love that one. I love both of them, but that one in particular, when you give somebody that key task and you make that key task, making sure everybody has an equal say. That's perfect. I wish I had done that like 50 times over now.
Same. And the thing is, these are all tasks that you will do as a facilitator, right? You're watching out, you're making sure everything is in order. So it's okay to delegate some of these. It's okay to ask if someone can help you with that. You don't have to. And this is something I keep learning again and again, that I don't have to do everything by myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you brought up the co-host at the beginning of the episode, same. I wish that I had thought about having a co-host because there's so much to do in a workshop that keeps you as a facilitator so stuck in like almost like that admin slash facilitator role that when you have somebody who can take notes, take photos, record things, get the food ready, all of these, make sure all the supplies are out. And if somebody needs something, run out and grab it for them, it can be such a fantastic thing. So yeah, I think that's a really great point. You don't need to do it alone either.
No, yeah, thanks. Indeed. And sometimes some people do want to be co-hosts because that's how
Yeah.
they get to learn, or they
Yeah.
get to be part of this, though they might not be super invested in the topic. Co-hosts are also of great help in breakout rooms, especially
Yes.
if you have to monitor a lot of breakout groups, even online or hybrid. And typically, breakout group questions can be, I didn't understand the activity instructions. Can you please repeat them?
Yeah.
Or we are approaching it from this angle. How do we do that? So your co-host can help you deal with more the logistical challenges, and then you as a host can make some decisions. Oh, wait, this group needs a different focus because of what they're thinking about. So you can also make those decisions. We do this at work. Sometimes some people are very open and they say, hey, I need a co-host to monitor a few breakout rooms, take notes, make pictures, like you said.
Oh, yeah, that's great. And I love what you said as well as like it's a great way to get practice, right? So like for people who are trying to get into it, as you said, finding those low stakes environments like a team retro, but also in addition to that, yeah, just becoming a co-host and seeing how you can help out and learn from others. I think that's another low stakes way of kind of working your way up into that facilitator role.
For sure, yes.
Yeah. And for people who are maybe newer to, or I guess it doesn't really matter if you're new to it or quite experienced in workshop facilitation, what is your like number one tip, let's say, for workshop facilitators or somebody who's interested in workshop facilitation? If you can nail down one, I'd happily accept
It
more than one though.
it's challenging to just nail down one.
Yeah.
Um, I would say have a mental framework where you're thinking of a workshop as three things: the pre-workshop, the preparation, what happens during the workshop, and what happens after the workshop, because that's also very important.
Yeah.
So rather than like trying to once think of activities and then the room and how will we wrap this up, break this down and start from the preparation. So the more you prepare, the wrap up gets easier. I also already prepare my wrap up email and everything as part of the preparation. And once you do this once or twice, you have your own templates ready. Yeah. So please do not skip the preparation phase. This is advice to past Bindu, future Bindu, and everyone who's listening to this.
Yeah, it is the most important because it's the foundation, right?
Yeah, like
Like,
you mentioned, right? The goals. Why are we doing this? Why are we asking so much time from so many people? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's so I really love that. That's a really, really good example. And I also wanted to talk really briefly about the after because I think that we can have workshops and we're like, yay, in the workshop, everybody's going, 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 but then what happens after?
Yes. So I think this also needs a little bit of self-awareness. I like to wrap up the workshops by already going over the next steps,
Yeah.
action items, and hopefully assign people to them. You can still be the one who aggregates and sends out that email or a wrap up for everyone, but having people take up some action items at the end is way easier than chasing them later for this. So people come with an energy, and it's very important to close a workshop also on that same energy. So like do just the way you would do an icebreaker, do a really good close out activity. It's something as simple as what's one new thing you learned today, or what's one thing you will do differently. Just like you asked, one tip, one actionable tip. It always helps. Then people reflect and then they write it down and they take it with them. And also then it helps you in wrapping up and sending it out. And there also is a lot of the boring tasks, at least for me, making pictures and synthesizing, digitizing all of this. Again, don't shy away from asking someone for help, because synthesis is a very valuable process, right? That's where you start connecting the dots and seeing a lot of this. If you are someone who likes to give fire to things and you are the starter, make sure you have a counterpart who likes to wrap up things
Yeah.
and can continue.
Yeah.
That's also something I've learned over time. So now I know that, who's a good counterpart for me who can help in wrapping things up.
Oof, that's a good one. Because there's both sides. There's people who do like that wrap up and that bringing that to the next level. And there are definitely people. I'm more of the like, let's go, like, let's get started. And then I'm like, I'm tired now because I'm an introvert and I don't want to deal with the next steps.
And make sure to take at least like a walk, because there's a lot of energy in your body. Even if it is online, even if you're doing this workshop from your home, to go for a walk, preferably outside if you can, or move in any way that you can. That's very important. And if you have this uneasy feeling of, oh, I thought it didn't go great or something, feel free to chat with someone, because sometimes we have these lingering feelings, and to not push them away, but really just understand what happened there.
Really good reminder because they can, no matter where you do them, they can take a lot from you. And if you had that doubt in the beginning and then it comes up again, it can be quite overwhelming.
And I mean, if you're feeling brave enough to ask for feedback, sometimes it's okay to not ask for how do I improve this? Not everything needs to be improved all the time. And if you're not feeling safe in a group, you'll know that for yourself. It's okay. If people come to you with feedback, that's great.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I like that. Not everything needs to be improved all the time. That's like should go on a t-shirt.
I have to look at it every day myself then.
Yeah, seriously. So usually I wrap up by asking about that one kind of actionable tip, but I feel like I already did and you already answered that. So I'm going to make it a little bit different and ask, do you have a favorite workshop activity?
Ooh, that's a difficult one. I did a design sprint recently,
Yeah.
and the part I loved the most was there's one activity which is called like a museum walk. Everyone puts their own sketches on the wall, and people are given these red or green dots, and they can go put dots on what they like. So it's almost, and you lay it out. This was in a physical space, but it was so cool to see all these different concepts and the heat map and then how it all comes together. And you really see that it was a collective thing. The end result, the end wireframe was collective from all of everyone's ideas.
Wow. Oh, I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's one of the key activities in the 4-day design sprint from Google.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very cool one. And everyone says like, "Oh, I don't know how to draw," but everyone can draw lines and boxes to some extent.
Yeah.
And the more simpler, the easier for others to understand.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. Oh, that's perfect. Awesome. Well, that's a perfect place to stop right there. So,
I just want to
you,
add one thing
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that a facilitation is a skill that you can develop. It's not that you're born with it. And that's something that I hope people tell themselves that, someone can appear natural, but you don't know how much of training and preparation they have done and what work they have put into this. I'm also self-taught, trained, mostly learned by observing others. There are really good resources online from Agent Smart, for example. So yeah, you can always learn how
That's
to make this your superpower.
That's a really good reminder. I used to be that kid who, when I got called on in class when I was younger, I used to start almost crying because I was so introverted and scared about talking in front of other people. And now I hold workshops and speak at conferences. So yeah,
And
you're
you
not.
host podcasts also. So
Yeah, it doesn't, if it doesn't come naturally to you, that doesn't mean that you can't do it.
that's
Yeah.
such a great reminder.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that about yourself.
I know it's a weird one. I feel like a bit of a wild card, but I love that message that you said about, it's definitely something you can develop and you never know how much time and effort somebody else has put into developing that skill. So yeah, try not to do the social media comparison.
So,
Amazing, Bindu. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure having you on, and I'm so happy we got to talk today about workshops. They're fantastic, and you had so many great things to say. So I really, really appreciate it.
thank you so much for this opportunity. I enjoyed talking to you and also hearing about your learnings and your experiences.
Amazing. Well, thank you, and thank you so much to all of the listeners who tuned in today or any other day because this is recorded. So I guess we're not technically tuning in today. So, yes, thank you to all of the listeners. Really appreciate it, and we'll talk soon.